That's
I know, because
like, if we can make it happen, why not? Okay.
Right.
Okay, let me make sure I hit record too. That would be sad. Done. Redirecting you to YouTube.
I know, because like, if we can make it happen, why not?
Okay, that's cool.
Right?
I think we're in.
That would be sad.
Hey everyone, I think we are live on YouTube. I just pressed pause because I don't want to be in two places at once. Also, okay, let me hit record. Recording to this computer, recording to the cloud, recording to this computer. Hey everyone, this is HeatherAsh Amara with Warrior Goddess Revolution. We are live on YouTube, I think. So we're waving at you on YouTube if you're here. This is my dear friend and comadre and priestess, sister, and rebel maker, Starwolf. And I'm so happy that we finally both had the space to do this interview. We've been talking about it for a long time after many, many conversations. So welcome, Starwolf. So glad to have you here.
It's good to be here with you. Yeah. And, you know, it's, of course, we would have to come together. When I lived here in the Western North Carolina in the mountains here since 2003. Okay. And of course, we would come together like about the second time ever that they've ever said that there were tornadoes in the area from the hurricane. And, you know, so there's a hurricane and there's tornadoes in the area, and that just never happens here. The hurricane may go by and we get rains, but not tornadoes. So I attribute this to us coming together.
The tornadoes coming to the winds coming together.
That's right. Two forces of nature.
Exactly. Yeah. And we are definitely two forces of nature. And I'm so honored to get to play with you and the ways that our lives have intertwined over the many decades now. I think that we've been friends. And yeah. So for those of you that haven't met Starwolf yet, I'll do like my just random introduction of you, and then you can do your random introduction of you. I'm not reading
very
anything. Random. So I heard about Starwolf before I met her. I think from our friend Lee McCormick, right?
Oh yeah.
I think that was the original connection. Probably. And you know, always whenever I'd hear your name, it's like, you guys have to meet. You have to meet Starwolf. And knowing that you had been in California and had a big community there and had left and moved into a place where there was a lot of land and where you started to build a retreat center and people followed you and you created community. And that was always my dream, was to do that. And my mama lives in North Carolina. So I got to come out to your land and meet you and meet Brad and just get to see this dream that you had created. And at that time, you all were building the temples. You were building the air temple and the fire temple. And all these different magical places on your land. And so that was, I think, my first intro to you. You've written 9 books. Maybe it's more now. It's probably more, probably 9 and like plus 20 that are in the ethers that are waiting to drop in. So you're incredibly prolific, and your passion really is breath work. So if you guys haven't met Starwolf, she is this force that brings so many pieces together. Shamanic Breathwork, which is one of her big passions and her incredible gifts. And I'm so grateful to have been able to do breath work with you. Recovery community and really supporting people that are in recovery, that are stepping into living lives in a new way. And deep shamanism through your work with Grandmother Twyla.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So how would you give us your journey in whatever condensed or long form you would like to today?
Well, first, I'm going to pop up this picture to see if you can see it. I just got this recently. Somebody sent it, and it's a picture of Grandmother Twyla with her wolf pup.
Oh,
look at her eyes. Does she look like she's about 10 years old?
She does.
They surprised her because she was a Seneca Wolf Clan grandmother, and they surprised her at a gathering. I wasn't there at that gathering, and they brought her a wolf pup. So she was like 5 years old at the moment when they did that. So what a treat. This was actually in 1987 when she got her wolf pup. And I never got to see her wolf pup, and she had it for several years. And then when I met her in the 90s, it was already gone. But, you know, she talked about it the way I talk about my dog that I had for 17 years. It was part wolf, named Vision Wolf. And if you've ever had a wolf or a dog that's part wolf, they're a soulmate forever. And so I just want to acknowledge Grandmother Twyla, the Seneca Wolf Clan, and her beautiful vision. And she was very close to many elders and very connected with Sun Bear, who brought back the medicine wheel, with Paige Bryant, who was amazing psychic and who passed 4 years ago and who wrote books about the vortexes. And Paige actually was one who identified the vortexes in Sedona and many, many years ago, and went to a company there and said, could you draw this? I think these are vortexes, And then Paige moved here to North Carolina because she felt, and then she started identifying the vortexes in North Carolina. So I went and spent the day with her husband the other day. Like I said, he's in his 70s and she passed 4 years ago. So I figured she and Brad now are on the other side of Grandmother Twyla. They're having a very good time trying to direct us and say, psst, psst, pay attention, guys. But he talked about the vortexes here. So he was giving me the vortexes that are located in North Carolina. And we started, Nicholas and I have been driving around the convertible up in the mountains and going back down trails and stuff and finding the vortexes that Paige wrote about and talked about here, because people haven't really paid that close attention to them. For instance, Looking Glass Mountain here, which I didn't know, I mean, I know where it is, but is the only, and this is scientifically proven, is the only mountain comprised almost completely of crystals within. It is the largest crystal mountain on the entire planet. And it's 30 minutes from my house. And I didn't know that. And if that's not a vortex, that's like, so when you come, we'll have to go there.
Absolutely.
Go to the Looking, and it's the largest, and it's 4,000 foot high. It's the largest crystal mountain in the entire world at its core. So no wonder this has become such a place like Sedona, that it's become such a place to attract people here, like around the Asheville area, and where we live next to Cherokee, one of the oldest civilizations, oldest inhabited lands is here. So I just want to share all that. And so definitely I love the connection to the roots. And HeatherAsh, before I came on today, I pulled a card today from the deck, and it was about the standing people, the trees, and about the deep roots that we need to put down in our lives so that we can be nourished. So as we had this first tornado warning in 10 years or whatever, I thought about that, about the roots and the trees, and how they have to stand against the great winds, and that this is something that I feel like that we're all going through, everyone around the world right now, is trying to figure out where we need to put down our roots. And that roots can go a long ways, and we can uproot if we're not in a place that's good for us, in a relationship or a piece of land or wherever. We can pull up our roots, but we need to find places to put our roots down where we're nourished, with friendships, that are solid, that are real, with real people and those kinds of things, with land that nourish our souls, and doing the work that we're here to do, because that's probably one of the most nourishing things, is to be on purpose, as you well know.
Yeah, so true. And the place of when the winds come, where are your roots? What are you rooted into?
Oh, what a good thing.
Question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we're in windy times.
Yeah. Windy, fiery times.
Windy, fiery times. Yeah. And change. And I love that you started around North Carolina, because my mom lives there, and that I've traveled around there just a teeny bit, that those are some of the oldest mountains. Those are ancient mountains globally, they're ancient mountains.
Yes. And, the Cherokee, many of the legends say that it's the first peoples. Of course, we hear that at many different places, but the first peoples emerged here, and that the Star people came here, this Jadakula Rock not far from here, where the Star people supposedly came. and that the ancestors and many tribes, you know this, in Africa and India and Egypt and all over the United States and South America, that the star people came and the people emerged, the first peoples emerged from the earth. But the Cherokee believe, and some of the elder prior to Cherokee, that this is the oldest mountain range in the world. And I did have a geologist friend here, and on our medicine wheel and our stones, you know, each of those stones are about 2,000 pounds. And she went and she was like testing the stones, measuring them, looking at them. And she said, well, if it's not the oldest mountain range, it's one of the oldest mountain ranges. She said, I would say that it's probably at least the third or fourth or fifth oldest mountain range in the world. She said, but it could be. So it's a very ancient land. One of the things I wanted to say about it, HeatherAsh, is that since we're on the North Carolina thing, I never really thought about that before. But when we moved here, I didn't know why we were moving here from California. I really didn't. I just follow my wolf nose, as Grandma Twyla said, just sniff and follow. But I didn't know why. But then after I got here, I realized that the most amount of herbal schools and in the whole United States are here. And okay. And then it became clear to me that there's certain foliage and things that are found here. My son kind of is into, science and biology. He said, Mom, there's some ferns and things in the mountains here that's not anyplace else anymore that we know of from prehistoric times. So interestingly, I love this. There's so much diversity in the plants and the herbs, healing herbs and trees and things. They've all learned how to get along. They've all learned how to live in biodiversity with one another, and to, when it's time for certain trees to take over, to give way. Okay, so that the whole can live. And there's so many herbal things growing here and plant healing medicine growing in the forest here. This is a rainforest, a temperate, moderate rainforest. That when you see all that so-called smoky coming up with Smoky Mountains, it's infused with the herbs of the mountains and the land. So there's so much that I'm learning being here. And I just thought, like, I'm called to go to North Carolina. And they're saying, this is such a wonderful place to be, especially now, and to be in nature so we can nurture ourselves.
So important. And why I love talking about this is so often, especially in the United States, we have this thing of like the Himalayas are where all the power is, or, Mexico and, all the places outside of where we're at.
Right.
And that place of rooting deeply, I think one of the things that the pandemic has shown us or gifted us is to be where we're at. And how do we root where we're at and find the sacred here? That every place that there's sacred, every place that there's like ancient wisdom or place, like unexpected places. And that's what I'm loving about New Mexico right now, is to just find these weird, like, who knew that was there?
Right.
But we have to look for it and ask questions and listen to the land.
And trust why we're guided someplace. If we really are all of a sudden, especially suddenly guided to be somewhere, and it's like very different from where we've been or whatever, that sort of thing. And me, I love going, like you, I love going to different places. And, the most recent book that came out last year was that Vera Lopez and I wrote, was about Peru, was the Mysteries of Peru. And I love the sacred sites there, and I can feel the energies there. And I was there before I was here, in this place. And now that I'm here with the mist rising out there on the mountains, it looks a lot like some of the mountains in Peru when I look out my windows here. And and then, we go to Egypt. We were going to Egypt. We're supposed to go to Egypt last year in December. Everybody hung in there. We're going this year in December, hopefully. And that's a magical place. And, to Africa, we've been to Africa. But I can tell you that I'm beginning to feel like what I want to do is show people around here, you know, and to stay home more and to invite people to come here. And of course, we have our retreat here, but I mean, really, not only to be here and retreat and teach people shamanic breath work and ship and recovery, which we do all the time. We do that online too, but to really take people to these, you know, these skinny dip falls that we've just found, which is a vortex supposedly, and the Looking Glass Mountain and the avatar tree. I don't know if you saw that I had a post to that, maybe not, maybe didn't see on Facebook lately, but it's this amazing tree that looks like that creature in the Never Ending Story movie, and it's bent over, and you can just, I'm 5'3", I barely reach up and touch it with my nose, and it looks like a dragon. And I just fell in love with it. I just was petting it and talking to it, and I've always loved dragons, so it was this whole feeling of like, oh, this tree is a dragon, you know, and I could feel it. So nature is so amazing and so healing and has so much for us right now. And that is one of the main things, of course, and I know you know this, that the shamanic world teaches us, is that the answers are all found already in nature to everything. Everything, you know, whether we go for meditation, whether we go for plants, for medicines, you know, for a walk, to meet an animal that gives us a message, whatever it might be. In the past few days, I always say in Kentucky, bless his little heart, I found a little hummingbird on the trail, and he had left, and I brought him home. And then Nicholas brought in a great big cicada that had left its body. And then I found a great big hornet yesterday that had left his body. So I laid them all together in these little prayer hands that I have. They're all three there as medicine, you know, like, what do you three have to tell us right now? You know, and I'm still meditating on it. What is it? You know, I know symbolically what you mean to me, but why now have we found you, and, you know, that you've left and perfectly informed, and what's the medicine there, you know?
Yeah, it's almost like the medicine under our noses.
Yeah. You know, and you can walk by it and go, ooh, a dead bird. You know, ooh, a dead hornet. Ooh, you know, or a cicada. Ooh. But they're beautiful little creatures. You know, they're so magical. And this year there's been an awful lot of bees around, which is a good thing on one hand. But there's been a lot of stinging bees around here. So we've had some people getting stung. And so it's like, okay, what are you trying to tell us? Because some of the bees seem angry. They seem upset, you know, and it's like, because we've lived here, you know, and I very seldom, I mean, there's bees everywhere here in these mountains and woods. And I'm knock on, as my grandmother used to say, knock on wood. I think I've only been stung maybe once or twice since I've been here. And this summer, you know, my dog got stung, Nicholas got stung, my two other gals that live here got stung, and, you know, and then we have this big hornet, really large. And I'm like, okay, you know, what is this symbolizing? Because it's not just me, it's other people, you know, looking. And people can say, well, can a dead bee just be a dead bee? I'm like, maybe in your world. Everything talks to me, you know. They give people medicine like me sometimes, the wrong kind. You're like, okay, everything is too symbolic. Give her some medicine.
It makes me think about, there's a great story from Susan Weed, who's a fabulous herbalist who lives up in New York, written a bunch of books, but one of her books, she writes about her relationship with nettles, stinging nettles, and that she always harvested them such a way that she never got stung. And then one time she's harvesting and they start stinging her, and she's like, what is going on? And she started looking around, and she found a place where she had by mistake piled a bunch of things over some nettles. And she unpiled, she's like, apologized, unpiled, and she stopped getting stung.
That's very interesting that you're saying that. And, you know, when I first got sober 39 years ago, I studied with Susan.
Did you? Oh my gosh.
I did.
She's been around for a while. Yeah.
She's been around a very long time. I was 29 and she
Wow.
was a wise woman then. So she's been around a long time. But now that you're saying that, I'm thinking, we've been weed eating, right? And we've also been, we also became stewards of another piece of land here. And so Nicholas has been out clearing a path up that part of the mountain. So it could be that some of those creatures got displaced, maybe they were in the ground or something and they got displaced and they're saying, okay, we're not happy about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A good one to go dream into and ask those beings. Yeah. And I think that as we, that thing about stewarding land, and I think stewarding land is really the same as learning how to steward our own bodies and how to steward communities. Like it's all connected, and that act of stewarding causes displacement sometimes.
It does.
It just does. Like I on the land that I'm stewarding right now, I've got somebody coming in that's thinning the trees, and we're doing a pretty heavy thin because people are like, don't cut down any of the trees. Like it's so unhealthy for the trees to be so close together. And so this practice of thinning them, and what I do is go out and pray, and I'm like, okay, we're clipping fingernails, right? Because they're all connected. Like,
yes.
And this, for all the tree beings to flourish, there needs to be less of them.
It's true. Because if you don't, they'll do it themselves. That's, when the trees come, certain trees come, and then when the other trees that come and the hardwoods start to come, then the others have to go, and they'll die off. But I love it because my understanding is they don't just die off. When they die off, they become the nutrients for the roots of those other trees.
Yes.
But we have, unfortunately, down the road here, we have some people who just clear cut because there's a lot of building wanting to happen around here right now because it is becoming such a popular area. But some of the people have just come in and just clear cut and just mowed things down and really ravaged the land, and then they're going to do a lot of planting of grass. And I don't want to offend anybody who likes to have beautiful grassy lawns. But if you could be here and look out my window, it's a jungle of plants and flowering plants and, but it's not weeds, but it's just all kinds of stuff that's just so beautiful. But anyway, and I'm, if you like a nicely mowed lawn, that's wonderful. But it's so sad to see somebody clear cut a whole mountain and then laying down to plant grass. It's like, couldn't you leave a few trees? People are going to want to plant trees. That's the good news, is that trees will grow back, Yeah.
But that's based on expediency and profit versus how do we work with the forest and keep some of these trees and build with them rather than over. It makes me think about just one of the things that is just always heartbreaking to me, which I see all the time. Like there's a place called Apache Mesa that I drove by the other day, and I'm like, it's like going into places where you cut all the apricot trees down and then you call it Apricot Lane. You go in and you kill all the natives, and then you're like, this is Apache Mesa, because the Apaches used to be here. And I'm like, yeah, but you pushed them all to Oklahoma.
Off the cliff.
Off the cliff, or so anyway, personal heartbreak around that.
It is heartbreaking, and that when we can depersonalize something, and of course the biggest being people, and animals and trees, and when we can depersonalize, then there's a way in which we don't have to take responsibility and take time to care what happens to them, and that's something that, that's still, it's still happening all, around the world. It's not just in, Afghanistan or, it's around the world. And it's hard sometimes to keep our hearts open and stay sensitive. You know, I'm very sensitive. I know you're very sensitive. And there's a price that we pay for being very sensitive. Sometimes I'm getting kind of teared up now talking about it. There's a price we pay for keeping our hearts open because we're vulnerable. We can get hurt more easily, no matter how much of a warrioress we are. You know, we became warriors for a reason. You know, and being a sensitive fairy, elven girl, hello, another myself, I get that. And yet, if we become too much of any element, too much wind, too much fire, too much air, you know, too much water, too much earth, if we don't work to create that balance within ourselves, we can lose our sensitivity. We can become calloused. It's okay to have calloused fingers from what we're doing, you know, in the garden or building, but I think we want to do like the shamans, you know. I love those images. Maybe it was Joan Halifax years ago. I had a book, I think, on that showed where the shaman, when its heart gets too healed, opens their chest and pulls out their heart. And it's like, well, why did you do that? And it's like, because I have to keep it open and sensitive and in touch with everything so that I can continue to be a healer for myself and others. And then I put it back in. We don't want our hearts, or I don't want my heart to get hardened and say, oh, well, you know, oh, well. It's really important to stay sensitive. Yeah, I love it. Michael Franti says, stay human. Stay human, you know. And Grandmother Twyla used to say, stay humane. You know. So a lot, you know, I talk a lot about becoming a real human being. Grandma would always say, be a real human being. And other Native teachers say, be a real human being. And then one day Grandma popped off. I think she just made up and said, maybe we should stop being human and be humane beings, you know? And so ever since then, I've been saying that, you know, that we're spiritual beings seeking to be humane beings on earth. And finding the balance between when it's time to cut a tree and when it's time to climb up in that tree and live in it for a year and say, no, you're not cutting this tree down like Julia Butterfly did. There's both of those are true, right?
Both of those are true. Yes. And here's weaving into what we started this conversation with before around the place of separation. And you know, just to tag up what you said is like, yes, let's have calloused hands and fingers from the work, but not have calloused hearts. And that there's times we have to rip the callus off. And for me, I'm like, it's choice after choice. Like I'll go through a hard thing and I'm like, oh, I want to be not tougher. That's not the right word. Like there's part of me that just wants to shut down and just say, I don't want to have to feel this. I don't want to have to, like, this is too much. And then to come back and to open my heart again and to learn, you and I have been in deep dialogue about this, to learn how to have an open heart and make the boundary, to stay sensitive and say no, or say yes. But then I think there's just choice after choice after choice. It's not like your heart's just open. There's so many moments where it's like, okay, how do I stretch into this?
Yeah. What we were talking about a little bit before we came on, and you know, I was just personally sharing with you that there's so many viewpoints about what we're in right now, what we're going through right now here, and it's like it's a can of worms, you know. It's like I hate to even bring it up because it is like, let's just play nice, or let me just take my marbles and go over here, you know.
And wait till you all figure it out.
Right. You all figure it out, you know, and, you know, it's like, and also I don't want anybody, you know, to not like me anymore, you know, and, you know, that, what am I, 3? Yeah. it's embarrassing. It's like, but it's like, that's how I feel. And then it's like, and also I don't want to not like them, you know? And I felt like, my face is getting red, you know? But it's like, what I really, really want, you know, I feel like, what do I really want? What I really want is, you know, open conversation from the heart. And people could be all passionate about something, but it can become dogmatic, you know, and that doesn't feel like it's coming from the heart. Passion sometimes is not necessarily coming from the heart, you know. It can be coming from someplace else. And I'm not saying it's wrong or whatever, but I really would love it to just be able to feel like that people could just say what they think or feel or believe in an open-hearted way. And it's like, what's coming to me is Grandmother Twyla and others, even before I met her, talked about the talking stick, the sacredness of the talking stick. And that with the talking stick, it's like the talking stick has the power to make us behave ourselves. Okay. Yeah. To put on our big girl, big boy panties and behave ourselves. And that the person that calls the talking stick just says, let's talk and be respectful and speak our personal truth. Okay. As we see it, knowing that by the time it passes, our personal truth may change or have more information, or maybe even more stronger, okay, whatever. But come in willing to simply share my sacred point of view for the moment, subject to change, okay? When I gather more information, or when something happens to me or someone I love or whatever, you know, that, or until I have a vision or something, that this is my personal truth. And then to share it and not trying to convince anyone, just sharing it to be heard, to be witnessed, to be received, not agreed with, not disagreed with, just that can happen inside of other people's heads, but with that truth. And then when I've shared that and I feel complete, to pass, not for the next person to comment in a direction, you know, even sideways about what I've said, but they could be on a completely different subject, or it might be the same, but now their personal truth. Okay. And to go around that circle and watch what happens in our hearts when we know that we're not going to be given feedback, when we know that we're not going to make a decision today about anything, when all that's happening is people are sharing their, you know, their full-on process, whatever, within a limited amount of time. That is such a healing thing to have happen. I have had my mind and heart changed in those things. I've also become more clear about why I feel the way I feel. New information has been given, or people have come up to me afterwards and said, you know, I changed, or I'm now considering, or whatever. And just a quick example of that is that some years ago, HeatherAsh, I think you know this, that we were here doing some stuff on the land, and there was an area that needed to be burned from old things that were down. We had permits, we had the fire department people here, everything, it was great. And there was a fire and to burn it, and it got out of control. And it's known around here as one of the worst fires around here. And it came up over the mountain. Our whole community had to evacuate. It burned, I don't know how many trees. I was devastated by it. I just, it was beyond. And some of the people who lived here had major feelings about it. And we had to come together afterwards and sit down together and have a talking stick and not point fingers and not, you know, because there was some of that happening, and we had to talk about it. And, you know, and Brad, my late husband, you know. He was the one who was mainly overseeing it. So he felt a huge responsibility. Plus, it was the land that we had, bought and stewarded and invited people to. I felt a huge responsibility. And I think it's the only way that we could move forward, because after we did that sharing and then we agreed to do like a healing for the land and things like that, things moved forward with the land. I'm happy to say today, and that was, I'm trying to think, that was about 10 years ago, I believe. If you go and walk the mountains here, you can't see any of the trees are all back. The land is recovered. Maybe if you went way out somewhere, you might find a log, but everything, and that's just a relatively short period of time, So when those things happen, I think it's important to remember the regenerative soul of nature within us and in the plants, the trees, and all of life. But we have to be, we will at some point move past the pandemic. It will happen. What that looks like, I don't know. I have my ideas, but we will move past it. But will we move past the division that we're creating with each other, And because quite frankly, I could go either direction. That's a big risk for me saying that. I'm very liberal. That people shocker, right? But I understand, having had grandchildren who were autistic the day after they had vaccinations. Okay. And helping bring them back. And now neither one of them, both of those boys graduated from high school this year. We had to have them on major certain diets, all kind of things. I worked shamanic stuff, and nobody would ever know now. But these kids broke out windows at 2 years old and couldn't talk and spoke in foreign tongues after, they don't really even remember it now. But it's tricky. I can see, and I'm a person who'll take a stand, but right now I can see both energies. I really can. And it's like if I say that, which I am saying that, I feel like I have people right now probably that I love and care about on both sides will be angry that I'm saying this. But I've never hid. And I don't want to hide now. I want to ask us to, whatever people feel. Here's what I feel. I feel humble. I feel like the smartest thing I can say is I've scoured the internet. I've listened to all my, Michael Moore, who I love, I've listened to all my liberals, and I've listened to, and I've listened to all my kind of down home Southern folks that are my family and friends and stuff. And, and Earth Wisdom, I've listened to all around. And I humbly don't know. And that's the smartest thing that I can say. And it's not a cop-out. Because if I feel like I know, I will share that. I would feel a responsibility. I know that recovery works from addiction. Next year, God is willing, I'll have 40 years. I know that it works. I know that shamanic breathwork and firewalk and warrior goddess warrior, I know those things work. With this, I have to be humble and say, and no, I don't need 50,000 people here all of a sudden writing me from both sides and sending me. Believe me, they've already done it, convincing me because I'm a voice. And if I, and I'm like, you've all made extremely good cases. And I'm praying for clarity for all of us. I think maybe the answers will come when we could all start saying, instead of I know, I don't know. That's where my heart really is. I wish we could just come together and say, I'm afraid not to know. And it would be easier to say I know, but I don't.
And that's wisdom. I mean, I agree with you in that there are so many unknowns and so much passion on both sides, like you said, of that this has to happen, this can't happen. Like, you can drive yourself crazy trying to figure out what's truth. And God, it's so delicate. And I feel like there are people that are taking stands, and that how do we take a stand for something that we're passionate about and that we feel really strongly about without demonizing anybody else. And that's what I'm interested in. And I hear that that's what you're interested in as well. It's like, you don't have to be passionate about something and then make everybody else wrong. And that's where we're getting ourselves in trouble, I think. And that idea of the talking stick of like, I respect that you have a different voice. I have a respect that you have a different perspective. And that doesn't make you opposite me. It makes you a different facet. And that we all have a piece.
Yeah.
We all have a piece. I was just reading about a woman who wrote in Yoga Journal about her experience for herself of deciding to get vaccinated as part of her nonviolent practice to support her community. She's like, personal choice, really important to me. I feel really passionate about it. And here's my experience. And afterwards it went completely viral. And she's like, I don't know what just happened, but suddenly she has all these people writing her with extreme hatred, demonization, and she's just like, this is the yoga community. Like, our whole basis is supposed to be on wellness and compassion and nonviolence. And so I've just been watching some of her videos because as somebody who's very outspoken and like newly like kind of elevated to this place where she was like, I didn't ask for this. I just wrote an article about my experience. It's not even that great of an article. And I read it and I'm like, it's not even that great of an article. But boom. Not that it's a bad article, but it's like, not like she went out to research it. She's just like, this is my experience, right?
Right. Which used to kind of be almost safe to do.
Yeah. No longer safe. Yeah. And so now she's in this awkward position where she's like, I don't want to be a spokesperson, but suddenly I am. And how do we do this in a good way? And one of the things that she's been posting over and over on her thing is like, please don't demonize people that don't want to get vaccinated. Stop it. Right. And she's like, that's what she's ending up educating people around is, this is my choice. I think this is really important, but we don't have to demonize anybody who doesn't believe this way on both sides. Like, can we stop that? And I think that that's something that is so hard for us to be able to hold, like you said earlier, the and, the both, the and the both.
Yes. And it's, it's, when we do that, then we really lose. I think that because I come from a shamanic perspective and a soulful, spiritual perspective, I believe that everything happens for a reason. I didn't like it when my late husband 7 years ago died of cancer. Okay. I didn't like the almost 2 years of hell we went through. I didn't like what chemo and radiation did to his body. And because of that, I'm not sure that I would do chemo and radiation. I don't know. I won't know until that comes. I don't know. But having watched it, if I was late stage, I don't know that I would fight. I've had a good life. I want to stay. I want to live like Grandmother Twyla to be 94 years young, but I don't know. And I didn't necessarily agree with some of his choices, but that was his choices to do. what he did. He wanted to stay alive. He wanted to stay here. And the doctor said, you got to do this or you won't make it. You're fourth stage. And you may not make it anyway, but you've got to do this. And that's what he did. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings around that I'm not going to go into. I learned a lot from it. And I also learned from that I would really, really have to think twice about going down the road he did based on what I witnessed. But I don't think that that nobody should get chemo or radiation or have surgery or do what they can. And if other people, I have a friend who was diagnosed late stage and he went to Mexico and he did some experimental stuff. He's not supposed to be alive and he's doing okay. He's doing pretty good. So I'm probably would try that first, probably. But you don't know. I don't think, none of us know. Brad was extremely holistic. He had been, with Michio Kushi and, microbiotic and all that years ago. So, so you don't know sometimes until you're faced with that yourself as to what you will do, and I think that there can be a kind of spiritual arrogance that can come with people sometimes out of fear of not having the answers, not because we're bad, but the fear of not having the answers, especially for our children or, our parents or, and there is something I feel that I have to say here, and that is, I think truly the biggest pandemic on this planet is addiction and codependency. Addiction and codependency. I think codependency, I still work on my codependency every day. Any of us who are sensitive, like I don't think about taking a drink or drug. I know I'm a recovering addict. It's been almost 40 years. I'm sober one day at a time. Just don't pick up, right? I don't even think about it. However, my codependency, talk about a low bottom codependent. I say if you go into codependency and you look it up on Wikipedia, there'll be Starwolf, So,
and here's our demo. And I think I'm right next to you. And there's HeatherAsh. I'm with you on that.
Well, and this goes back to this being sensitive and caring and loving, and because one of my most beautiful teachers who just had her, I think, 91st birthday recently. I talk about Grandmother Twyla, but Jacqueline Small of the Psych Institute. My God, I love that woman. She wrote a book on codependency, and she said, I love it. I have to give credit to her. She says, codependency is the shadow side of love. Codependency is the shadow side of love, and therefore, it's an honest mistake. And it comes from our childhood and our culture and society that it's rampant. If you want to talk about a pandemic or epidemic, whatever, that codependency is rampant. And though that we kind of divide into the addicts and the codependents. And some of us do twofers.
We want to experience it all. So
want the whole enchilada, right? But what I know is that every addict was first a codependent. And that extreme sensitivity and caring can lead then into food addiction, sex addiction, and alcohol, all the other addictions, to try not to feel so much. The sensitivity.
And I think that's what's happening now, Starwolf, is we have opinion addictions.
Right.
Yes. In order to feel safe, instead of putting something in my mouth or drinking something, I'm going to say, I know what's happening. You just have to do this, or you have to not do this. And then we have this sense of, I am in control. I can stuff all those feelings of worthlessness, fear, out of controlness, because I have the answer.
It's true. I love what you said there about the opinion addiction. I think that's really great. And I think also that, Ann Wilson Schaefer wrote many years ago, When Society Becomes an Addict, And at that same time, you know, the information was coming about adult children alcoholics and codependency, Melody Beatty, Codependency No More, all those people. Those things became my Bible, you know, 30 years ago or longer, actually. But anyway, oh my, how time flies when you're having fun with codependency.
Exactly.
But the codependency piece, not everybody is an alcoholic or, you know, a porn addict or whatever it might be. But I've never met anybody that didn't have at least a piece of codependency. And to me, the codependency is when we give over our power to someone else's opinion out of a fear that they won't love us or they won't like us anymore. And it literally feels like I will die. I will die. I'm a bad person. I will die. I should eat worms. I don't deserve to be here if this person doesn't like me or love me. And so, you know, that's coming from our childhoods. You know this, you do this work all the time. And it's a feeling of impending doom and death that I'll cease to exist. And that's not what we know. We're not consciously knowing that that's why we're making these decisions to people please or tap dance or, you know, whatever it might be, make everybody happy, be the chameleon, whatever it might be. But there's really a child that's afraid. So I think that it's important. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. I think it's important to be true to our own voice and to try it's not to not care what other people think or feel, but to let other people think and feel whatever they need to, you know?
Yeah, and to trust their journeys. I feel like one of the things that Don Miguel used to talk about around like pleasing or trying to fix somebody else was like, that's the height of self-importance. When you think you know what's better for someone else.
Right.
Right. I just read this great book. I'll send you a copy of it. It's called Good Morning, Destroyer of Men's Souls. And it's written about codependency and this woman who it's a memoir. It's beautifully written, who has a sister who, when she's young, is a heroin addict, and like that whole journey of being a younger sister and watching her sister, you know, and that whole codependency piece, and then getting into a relationship with a heroin addict, and you know, like very conscious and very studied, and like, and here I am.
Right.
And it's her unraveling of it. And it got to that point where she was like, he gets to be a heroin addict.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. Yeah. My dog. Come on, buddy. Lay down.
And how hard that is to let people be on their journeys.
Yeah. And you know, if we're really honest about it, or let me put it this way, if I'm really honest about it, okay, I'll do the say in the eye. What I'm really unconsciously worried about is how I'm feeling about it all. About it hurts so much, you know, and how am I going to feel if they die, you know, or if they don't get better, or I could have done something, you know, because after all, I am, as a codependent, supposed to save the world, you know, so hence we become therapists, you know, we become, you know, healers, teachers, and that's one of the beautiful things of the woundedness of the codependency is this great love and care, you know, but it can be destructive itself if there isn't consciousness in it. If there isn't the consciousness of everybody gets to make their own decision. That's the, you know, so I think it's where it is. So if someone you love doesn't get a vaccination and you don't feel safe being with them, then you have to, or I'd have to, whatever you have to say, I don't feel safe. I love you. And I guess I'll see you when this is all over. We'll talk on Zoom, you know, or you can get a test before you come to see me. Or, people are having to figure out new boundaries. But can we find those boundaries without demonizing each other? That's where I'm really at with it. Like when I said to somebody, okay, we're going to be doing, hopefully, our live 2-week here, which you'll be a part of, hopefully, here in the mountains. It's outside. I mean, we've got a roof, in the air temple, and the medicine wheel, but it's outside. So that makes it nice. Mask for some people, not mask for others. People can social distance. People can say they're not comfortable with hugging. Those kinds of things. We'll do our best. And we ask people to do a test that says, entry. And if they test positive, then we love them and we bless them and say, what can we do to support you to go back and do what we need to do? That way it keeps everybody safe. That's not saying that you should have done anything different. We did that at Gathering of the Shamans. We all tested. It was like, I don't know, 150 or 200 of us there. I haven't heard anything bad about anything that happened there. Massive gathering and being very respectful. I knew some people that were vaccinated, some weren't. We did the best we could, and then also gave people personal choice around that. So I feel like that you and I spoke about this a little bit earlier. I just want to say it again. Whenever I find myself, I learned this a long time ago, in the either or, it's really a split inside of me. And I need to come back, for me at least, both and. The both and. And who knows, maybe this is even not correct. I don't know.
We're willing
But
to learn.
Yeah, we'll learn.
Yeah.
And I really just want to, the message is going out to people, to ask people to come back to their hearts, to look at your own codependency one way or the other. And also our connectedness with each other. And, what's going to be the best options for us, for all of us, but without the codependency. Some people, have autoimmune disorders and different things, and they, elect to get the vaccination because of that, they may get sicker. Others are fearful of it because it can actually make them very ill. So again, everybody's going to have to find their own way, and if this is here to teach us right now to find something deeper in ourselves. If we wouldn't stop and find something deeper in ourselves before, to find our soul's voice, this is a golden opportunity instead of pointing the finger at other people. Yeah.
Beautifully said. Yeah. And that place of respecting other people's decisions, that we can have a lot of passion about what we believe is right and share that.
Yes.
And talking stick. Like, I love that vision of, like, you get to hold the talking stick and say what's true for you. And when you pass it, like, there's a way of, I'm not listening to anybody else's opinion or voice, or I'm willing to listen to people's opinion and voice, which doesn't mean you have to listen to everybody's. You get to have boundaries too. But can we make those boundaries without making the other person wrong or bad or evil or demonized, or they're the problem? Like, I keep telling, like, my community, I'm like, things are complicated. Can we be with the complexity instead of going into good, bad, right, wrong, of just, it's complex. I have friends who are immune compromised that are choosing not to get the vaccine. And what I say to them is, and what I've said to all of us is, like, use your intuition really deeply. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was like, this is going to give us the opportunity to really use our intuition. So, like, I use my intuition when I'm traveling around, is it safe here? Is my body okay here? And I feel like we all get to do the same thing now as we're navigating, of, like, is it safe here? I didn't go to Gathering the Shamans last year because I got a really clear do not go. This year, I checked in. I was like, okay, I can go. And so learning how to trust each other's intuitive capacity, and also to keep open of taking new information in, so that we're not hardened and we're also not completely porous.
Yes.
Like the beds, like not too soft and not too hard.
Goldilocks.
Yeah.
Just right.
That's right.
Just right.
Mm.
Well, you know, in the end, for all of us, all that's going to matter is how much we loved each other and ourselves and this planet. That's, as far as I'm concerned, nothing. That's all. You know, I've been with quite a few people who've passed, you know, over the years. And, you know, I've lived a while and been a counselor for a long time. I've been a counselor since my 20s, so I've been a counselor for a long time. And I've watched a lot of people go. I've been with people and I've helped people close, or, you know, their family members, and all that has mattered, regardless of what people died from, whether they died from a drug overdose, whether they died in a car accident, whether they died from cancer, old age, you know, whatever it was, accidents, all that mattered. And from the people that were left behind was how much they love that person. Even if the person made their life hell at times, it was, you know, as an addict or whatever, you know, was how much they love that person and the specialness of that person, you know. And this is such a beautiful planet. I'm sitting here in so much beauty, and I know you are too. There's so much beauty here. And the most beautiful thing is opening our hearts and allowing ourselves to love this planet, to love nature, to love the creatures, to experience the magic in everyday life, to have friendships that can, you know, talk and hold these kinds of things, and to love each other and know that you have a friend. You've got a friend, hopefully not a codependent friend, is what James Taylor should have said. You just call out my name, you know, that you've got those friends. And, you know, that's the wealth, and that's the happiness, the inner happiness and joy. And to know that you're loved by a couple of people, your dogs, you know, and the plants that you water, you know, to know that, and to make, you know, make love, to make more love. And that's what, you know, and I'm not talking about being in spiritual bypass and, oh, it's all good. But ultimately, it is all good. You know, I believe, you know, I grew up as a little girl in the Baptist church, and there's still a little Baptist in me. And I do believe that all things work together for good for those who love God, you know, and God is good, orderly direction. And AA, they say, you know, for those who love that organizing principle, all things work together for good. And when that doesn't look like it, I remember that. And I've lived long enough now and been through some pretty hard things, I know you have too, to see that that's true.
And to hold that the big picture arc, right? Because it may not look good now, and in certain areas it does not look good now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And many of the things that we're navigating as humans right now, of the division and the just the structures that we're undoing. And I always look at like long story, like the short story is really messy right now. How do we continue to step back without spiritually bypassing? Because I feel like we have to hold the short story and understand the short story and the history, and like really grok what's happening, as we also hold the bigger story. And that when we do both, we can navigate. It's tricky to learning how to do both, because we want to like, oh, it's just all going to be great. That doesn't work so well either. Or it's, you know, like we get just so fixated on what's happening right now and the fight and the struggle, and that isn't sustainable either. What I've seen as sustainable is, again, like you're saying, the and. Mm-hmm. The and. We're in this time, we're in human bodies, we're here for a reason, to care for each other, to learn how to love each other deeply, to learn how to untangle all the tangles. And we're also learning how to hold the biggest picture simultaneously, not separately, simultaneously, so that we can have that incredible patience to be sustainable to stay inspired, to know that things are changing incrementally towards more connection, towards more community, towards more beauty. And damn, is it hard.
Mm-hmm. Well, holding the both and, the both and, without being codependent and being like whichever way the wind blows kind of thing, really requires kind of stepping back a little bit. I'm looking at your picture on the wall back there, and really in that big picture and saying, from here, it looks like this. From here, it looks like this. From here, and from outer space, it looks like this. But also from inner space, it looks like this. The particle and the wave theory and all of that. It's this quantum world, and of course, a lot of people are talking about the multidimensional realities of 3D and 4D and 5D and, 12D. And, my son, again, who's in his 40s, but who's very into science, he's saying like, Mom, they've discovered that there's a parallel universe and they think their time may go completely the opposite direction. So you begin here and then go all the way back, like Benjamin Button movie,
Yes.
And it's like, and that's just one parallel universe they're pretty sure that exists, and I was like, well, am I there too? And then it's like, well, isn't that really the dimensions that we've been talking about? Barbara Hand Clow's been talking about, and my friend Judith that lives next door here wrote a book on 5D. Isn't this what we all know? And isn't this what we've been, what we've, in the very simplest of terms, of talk about being part plant, part mineral, part animal, part human, part gods, part spirit, part soul. I mean, in whatever words you want to give it. And each one of those feels something different, and this me that I am is this collective. That's why it can have and entertain so many thoughts and feelings and sensations all at once, and what is, now we're just, I'm getting into, I feel like I just dropped some acid. I was like, now I'm getting into,
now we'll go here.
It's been a long time, but they say it still floats around in your brain. But anyway, this consciousness that, when we really look at all this, again, what is this? Why this? Why now? Why this? Why now? And of course, being from the shamanic perspective, just kind of wind up a little bit, is just, I could hear Grandmother Twyla in my head because she lives in me and she speaks to me from the other realm. And she would be saying something to the effect of, remember, we've been talking about earth changes for a long time. The prophecies have been on the, as Simon and Garfunkel would say, on the subway walls, the sounds of silence, and in the hieroglyphics and in the Andean and the Egyptian and the African and the Peruvian, and, there have been predictions and those kinds of things for a very long time for those who walk between the veils and could see the future and that sort of thing. And, that there were going to be challenges, and that apparently we signed up to be here for these particular challenges, and tag, we're the ones that are working hard to make the right choices and decisions and things at this time, not only for, for who we love now, but for the future generations. And, to me, I guess this is all part of nature's struggle right now, and our planetary struggle, and with the climate, and with what's happening. And when you say the climate, that can just sound kind of cold, but we're talking about every living thing, nature. All things are in a struggle, whether we realize it or not, depending on where we are. And so it's clear that something is asking for change. And I think what it's asking for change for is human beings, because I think probably the minerals and the plants and the animals have it figured out. You know, they kind of had it figured out. But I think that the change that's being asked for is for us to change somehow. Maybe we may not know what that change is yet. And maybe this is an opportunity to do something different, with our relationship with nature.
And to circle back to where we started, root, to ground deeper, to get more still, to open our intuition, to listen, and to have that talking stick, but also pass the talking stick to the trees, and pass the talking stick to the birds, and pass this talking stick to the mountains. Listen without defending, without, oh, I know it's right, but really, what do the mountains say? What are the trees wanting to tell us? What are the bees wanting to tell us? What's my neighbor wanting to tell me? And that we get to sort. There's also, I think, more listening that's being asked of us, and more creativity. And I'd love you, as we close Starwolf, we talked again before about this young man that you are super inspired by right now. And it feels like that type of creativity is what we need more of. So if you could share about him and how he's touched you.
Yeah. So there's this fellow named Suru Guru. And he's an African man in Kenya. I'm not sure how old he is. He looks pretty young. He was grew up in the streets of Kenya. He was a father at 17. He, was hungry. He was in the streets. He ended up in prison. When he came out of prison, he knew he educated himself in there the time he was in there. When he came out, he had studied lots of different religions and spirituality, and took that time. It was like he was in college, I'm sure it wasn't like that. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to minimize his time in a prison in Kenya. Okay. But he came out, but instead of being bitter, he came out with a determination to make a change. So he could sing pretty good, and he became a rap artist. And I don't know him very well, in the sense of I've never met him personally. I just recently come into contact with him through another friend of mine who's been talking to him for a while. And so what has turned out is that he is doing rap music, but his rap music has a purpose. Not that it all doesn't, but some of it's a little bit, I think, just get down and party. And this is more about talking about what's happening, and it's kind of raw, what's happening in the street and those kinds of things. But it's also really good music, and it's kind of captured the people there. But also in that, he went back to the place where in the area he came from, and to the children in the streets. And he says, just, you would not believe how many homeless children are scrambling to eat every day there. Really touched me. And so part of what he's done is he's started this program about feeding the children. And he has gathered other people, and he's getting officials and different people and those kinds of things. And so they just started with like just one Saturday a month. And all these children, and at first these kids have to trust them, even, they're not going to grab them and do something like, but to come, and that they're not going to do anything, it just feed them and talk to them. And then there's services they can start offering these kids, and people, volunteers, and that sort of thing. So at first my friend approached me and said, Starwolf, would you make a donation? And I said, sure. So I made a donation, and she said, Suru would like to meet you. So he came on, and I met him, and I met his manager, and two precious young men. They just look so young. And I'm like, but they're making a big difference, and they're gathering people. And so I talked with him, and, I said to him, I want to bring you on to some of my Zoom calls, and bring you on to some of my programs and things, so that people can meet you, learn about your music, and learn how they can help support these children. And then he said, would you come to Kenya so you can see the kids? And I'm like, when this pandemic lifts, yes, I will come. And he said, well, you'll come, and, you can see all the children. They'll be so grateful to you for helping them. So that's, let me see here. I don't know if I have the link I sent that to you.
I'll grab it and put it in the show notes.
Will you do that? Will you
Yeah,
put that there
absolutely.
so that people can go on and listen to the music and see that it's legit and see what's happening? I'm going to be posting it on my Facebook page too. So it's Linda Starwolf if anybody wants to go in there. And he literally says, $10 makes a huge difference. They feed a child for $1, so $100 feeds 100 children. And if they get that one good meal, he said that's more than they get in weeks because they're scrambling. So, yeah. So, yeah.
Mm.
Well, I look forward to seeing you in person when the time is right, and doing a fire walk and shamanic breath work, and just being each other's physical presence. And I want to acknowledge you, HeatherAsh, for being the shamanic warriors of the heart that you are.
Mm.
And thank you so much for being out there. Thank you for being my friend, my sister, and thank you for being a voice in the world right now that is so needed. And I love you and thank you.
Thank you so much, Star Wolf. My heart is so full, and I'm so grateful for your friendship and sisterhood, and that I can call you and be like, okay, I've got a big knot. And you're like, tell me, let's unknot it together.
Vice
really,
versa.
really grateful. Yeah.
That's, and I just say that to the gals out there and the guys too, that make sure you've got, Grandmother Twyla used to say, make sure you've got at least two in case something happens to the other one. Make sure she did. She just make sure you've got at least two people that you honestly feel like you could talk to about anything, because if not, you're going to be in a lot of turmoil in life.
Yeah. And I'm grateful to have you in my life as one of those people. So thank you. Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah. Many, many blessings. And here's some more magic.
Yes.
Yay. Oh, that was so good. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording. And I think, do I need to stop the